Today's show is brought to you by KegConnection.com. Purchase all of your homebrewing and draft beer equipment with everyday low pricing and everyday flat rate shipping at KegConnection.com. Also, join the free Brewers Club Rewards program at KegConnection.com and start earning and spending points with every purchase. Go to KegConnection.com right now, use the promo code HHH, and you'll receive 5% off your order. That's KegConnection.com, promo code HHH.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Hey, welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you'd like discussed on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the Submit a Question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I am joined by the Director of Operations at homebrewsupply.com. Once again, Mr. Joe Ermis. Joe, thank you so much, sir. I've been calling on you a lot lately, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been good.
It has been good. I think we went 10 weeks without having you on the show, and now bam. I'm just
back to back.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give you the show at some point. Someone asked if we were related in an email, and that's not the first time we've heard that. And I said, "You're a racist." Generic looking white guy with a beard. Is that what this is?
Right. You remember that time we went and ate at Juanos, right?
Yes.
Todd went to pay, and the waitress asked did you hire twins on purpose? He said, well, they're not twins, but I did hire them each on purpose.
And I told you, I think that at that, I was like, I don't know if she's complimenting me or you or dissing one of us, so I apologize. I didn't know how to take it. Yeah, we're both ugly guys. Yeah. Which is not to digress too much from homebrewing, but you and I actually, I'm a little bit older than you, but we both, maybe differences in music a little. I like most of the music you listen to, the jam band stuff, but like you grew up playing soccer. Like we had a lot of similarities, card games. I didn't get into Magic, but they're like the gaming in general and all that. Like we could have been the same person in an alternate universe.
Right.
If you watch Seinfeld, you are Bizarro me, or I'm Bizarro you. Outdoors stuff, obviously now brewing. You're a much better brewer, and I'm not being humble about it. I mean,
did you skateboard back in the day?
I did. Just longboard though. I don't.
Okay.
We would go to this park. Oh my gosh! Now it wasn't Ditmar. I forget the name of the park in Austin. It was kind of near Old Torf. We would go there at like 1 a.m. at like 16 years old, and we'd have our own spotlights. And
nice.
Because the park was technically closed. We never, cops never came, and we went there at least 20 times. Me and my buddies Trey and Joel, and they would skateboard, and I would just like they could do things. I would just cruise around, because I was never dedicated. Like when I realized the intricacies of doing an ollie consistently, I was like, I can't do it. Thus, I hate this. Yeah, that's the story of my life. Is like if I can't get good at it in an hour, then it's not worth my time.
It's not worth the time. Yeah. See, I got pretty decent, and then stopped for a while. And when I got to college, I had met some new friends, and we skated and kind of got back into it a little bit. And then I broke my hand. I was skateboarding at the San Marcos Park, and I like busted it and broke a bone in my hand. And so I was out of work for like a month. I was casted, and I was a tire technician at the time. So I was out of work for a while and realized I was living off ramen. And I was like, yeah, I probably need to give up the hitting rails. And
isn't that funny? The older we get, and sometimes in jiu-jitsu, like I've had a bum neck for about a year now. And sometimes I'll go with guys and it'll get real hard and I'm hurting the next day. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm in a hobby that might affect my day job. Maybe I should take it easy. I'm not 20 anymore.
Right. You don't recover as fast when you get old.
Dude, you don't. I don't know who recovers anymore at all. And when I complain about being old, I'm going to be 34 this year. Then I have like the 40 somethings going, you don't know what old is. And then we have like the 60 somethings are like, what are you talking?
40's a new, 40's a new 20.
Everyone's gatekeeping, but I gatekeep the college kids all the time. I'm like, they're like, are you okay? Because I'm like rubbing my ribs or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm not okay. I'm dying.
Man.
Yeah. I'm dying. And my doctor tells me like, well, a lifestyle change could change that. I'm like, I could change doctors too, man.
Right.
There is a lot going on, talking about for Homebrew. Homebrew Con the registration's open. It's not sold out yet. If they go to homebrewcon.org or .com, they can sign up for it right now. It's going to be in Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah,
the American.
I'm excited.
Oh my gosh, I am so pumped. The National Homebrew Convention, but now just #HomebrewCon.
I got my email from American Airlines about my ticket, so it's like official. It's really kind of starting to set in.
That's how I felt when I got the email too. I was like, oh, I'm going. Okay. You never know with Todd.
That's true. Like we'll need to skim some this year, and Josh is out.
Yeah.
It's like exactly. So
but we are it is going to be we talked about it with James and I did last week's episode. It's going to be CM Becker, it's going to be Homebrew Supply, and it's going to be our friend Lorena at Brewer's Friend. They're going to have their own booth as well. I don't believe now Lorena has given a ton of talks. She's very well known and very well loved by pretty much everyone that goes to HomebrewCon and everyone who homebrews that knows her. But this is the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, that she's actually going to be manning a booth, and it's in our island.
I would assume so. Unless, years and years ago they did a homebrew talk booth, but I'm not aware of it. Last year was my first year. So, I mean, I really don't know 100%, but yeah, I would have to guess that you're right on that. But she was so much fun to hang out with last year. I had a blast, drinking with her at the hotel and just chatting with her and stuff.
Man, that is still my favorite moment from last year's HomebrewCon is we get to our hotel and in the lobby was John Blickman and Tom. Oh man, I almost forgot his name. I don't know his last name. I think he purposely didn't tell me his last name, so I couldn't find him on Facebook. But the Blickman guys were sitting there drinking.
Doug Granlund, I think is their technical guy.
Oh, Doug was there too. Oh, that's right.
I think it was everybody sitting down there.
And man, the details are fuzzy.
Well, see, that's the thing. That was after club night, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so y'all were all there, and I'd stayed for a while and hung out outside after they kicked everybody out. And so I showed up, and y'all are all sitting there at the table already, half a pint in. And I was like, well, I guess I'll join for a beer.
Yeah, and club night, for people who aren't listening. Well, first off, let me go back a step. If you've never been to a HomebrewCon, you owe it to yourself to go to a HomebrewCon. If you're an avid homebrewer, if you want to learn more, literally the talks that they give, if you're a member, you can access them through the internet after the show. They make it available to all AHA members. So you don't have to be there for that. But I'm telling you that you will get the equivalent of like a runner's high being around other homebrewers who are just as passionate as you are. If you have questions all
the booths are giving out free stuff. You bring your little swag bag and you're going to get stickers and grain and hops and, a bunch of free stuff.
On the last day, it is amazing what some booths go to not have to take stuff home with them.
Yeah.
So they're like, here, take this. I've seen people walking away with kettles. I've seen people walking and they are giveaways too. I don't remember if it was Spike or SS. Someone did a system giveaway last year. Blickman, pardon me. It was Blickman talking about John. They did a huge system, like the not Tower Power, but they did I think one of their
Brew Easy systems, I think.
Brew Easy, thank you.
Or maybe it was an Anvil system. It was one or the other, but so I mean, there's just
because we entered it and we weren't supposed to, and I still lost.
We got chosen. They tossed it aside.
Yeah, I asked John about that because we interviewed him last year, and I'm going to try to get him again. If I can get John Blickman on the show once a year, I would be a happy guy because he's super busy. He actually Blickman Engineering on their Facebook page just posted a photo of him and John Palmer. And I forget who else was on there. It was some other. They're all on a fishing trip, and I was like, "What a freaking trip to have been on!" Like, just these dudes. We're just a couple bros fishing. I'm not the type to. I want to add them as a friend on Facebook, but they'd probably be like, "Who is this guy?" And then it'd be weird when that's my icebreaker at HomebrewCon. Like, hey, John,
thanks for accepting that friend request, John.
Still waiting on that friend request, John. Or either John Palmer doesn't know me at all, so that would be great. Like, hey, we kind of have a connection. I do a podcast, but I friended you on Facebook. You may not have seen it yet.
Just don't touch Charlie. And then,
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess he probably won't be there this year, huh? Because he's retired.
I believe that this is what they're calling the send off.
Okay.
I think I don't know officially
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this is his final year. I have no idea because I'm supposed to know, but I don't always. So yeah, HomebrewCon coming up. If you can make it to Rhode Island, please do come see us. We don't have a booth number yet, but we're gonna have a booth that we're working. We might do some impromptu meetups after each day, especially if you know the spots to hang out at. Then we will definitely do those kinds of meetups.
We'll be serving beer at the booth.
We'll be serving good beer, and that's a great segue because I was gonna ask. I know because you, myself, Todd, and James have a thread going on about this. We know for sure, not like last year, but this year we are going to be bringing at least 10 gallons of alt beer. That's what I was told. Last year we did have the Kolsch on tap, didn't we? And we're going to bring that back. Then the rest, we have 2 more taps that are just kind of mystery right now. And one of them is yours.
Yeah, I think I've pretty much decided I'm going to do an IPL, an Indian Pale Lager. So it'll be something easy drinking, but still have a nice, citrusy fruit hop note to it. So I think I've brewed it a few times. I've tried some different yeast with it, and I've been happy how it turned out. You liked it, Todd liked it, so it seemed like a good choice. So yeah.
Is IPL a style that down the line you could make into a true to style type of recipe kit? Because I don't know the origins of IPL.
It's one of the newer kind of to the market styles. I don't even know if they've classified it yet. I don't
think it's in the guidebook. I don't know.
I don't think it has, set in stone guidelines or anything. Not like they matter that much anyway,
it really doesn't.
Right. But no, it's something that you see a lot of these, commercial breweries making that, if they're hop forward breweries, then you'll see a lot of them will be coming out with an IPL. And it's nice. It's a ease off of the heavy malt of some IPAs, and a little bit less ABV, so you're not you're not getting too smashed off a couple beers. So yeah, it's a style that I've been enjoying a lot, and I'm excited to give another run.
How much brighter is it than an IPA? Is it considerably because it's a lager and you're treating it like a lager?
Yeah, and in general, it's less malty. So you're gonna typically see it lighter in color and more clear. I mean, obviously some IPAs are hazy and some are much clearer than others. But yeah, it'll be a little bit lighter in color and a little brighter as well.
Nice. I was surprised the IPA. Segueing since we're talking about IPAs, my dad and I finally force carved and tapped that IPA. It is incredible. Great job on that recipe. My dad, he wrote Josh's IPA on the chalkboard because that's what you call the recipe. But I smudged it out real quick and put Joe's because that's the truth. I don't want to take credit.
Well, you're the one who brewed it.
We are the one who brewed it, but if I did a Blue Apron kit, it's not like this is my rigatoni. No, it was Blue Apron's rigatoni.
I feel you.
I've never done Blue Apron, but I imagine they have rigatoni.
That's one of their more popular.
We're gonna get an email. No, I get some goofy listener emails, and the meanest ones are like, "You talked about this, and that's not real." I'm like doodling, like, "Oh, it's son of a gun." So someone's gonna email me and go, "Blue Apron rigatoni is not a thing."
I've been actually emailing that company for years, trying to get them to do a rigatoni.
Yeah, Blue Apron, sponsor us too. You sponsor every other freaking podcast in the world. I just want a Blue Apron sponsorship. But we tapped it. It is amazing, and also I was impressed with how much brighter it is than I maybe thought it was. Obviously, it's not a hazy IPA. It was you said it was a very kind of traditional West Coast IPA in that line, and I was just impressed. I didn't know, IPAs in my experience lately have all been on the when I've been getting them at tap rooms. I went to Hops and Grain to meet our listener Frank, and I believe they had one of their IPAs. I got the River Beer, which is a lager. But I remember seeing a lot of haziness on the table, and haze has been the craze for IPAs. It was really refreshing, actually. I don't know what the psychological effect is of seeing a bright beer, but I really like it. Do you know what I mean?
It makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside, doesn't it? Just it looks like it's a professional made it,
That's what I mean.
It's not just murky water.
Yeah.
I think there is something to that. Having a real nice bright. It turned out pretty clear and everything for you.
It did. I did. I loved it, and I'm really like you said. The last IPL you did was incredible too. I know last year the grapefruit IPA you took went very well. I imagine we're going to take a little bit more like we did of that grapefruit for you, because last year the grapefruit. No, wait, was it the grapefruit or the juicy drop? Or that juicy IPA that you brewed? Which one did we take the most of last year? I forget now.
I think it was the New England IPA or the hazy IPA. We took 10 gallons, and the grapefruit we took 5.
Okay,
so,
but even then the hazy one you did went quick, and if we hadn't had more, it would have been the first one tapped. I mean, that went quick. I imagine being in Rhode Island and they're calling it Brew England, and they haven't basically said this is the New England IPA conference, but the gist is out,
hinting toward it.
Yeah. So I imagine even though it's not going to be hazy, I think your IPA will go very well. And then the last,
maybe I should do a 5-gallon batch of a hazy IPA too. I got to try out that Robo Brew.
Oh, good point. Yeah, we have a video for that. We need to make a video for that. The updated. Robo Brew. But yeah, I know that last tab, James was like, we'll let Todd do whatever. I imagine it won't be hard to convince Todd that we'll put a people pleaser on there.
Especially if we already have 10 gallons of alt and 10 gallons of Kolsch, that's those. I think those are his two kind of preferred styles too.
It is. He might pick an ESB if I was a betting man.
That's a good call, because he brewed one not long ago that turned out absolutely knocked it out of the park. So
and that was on that cooler brew system. People don't. Some people that were local there didn't believe us just because it's hard to. When you brew it on the spike and it comes out professionally, people are like, "Yeah, well, duh, that's a $5,000 system or however much it costs." But
look at all that stainless steel.
Yeah, exactly. It just probably did it for you, right? But on the cooler brew, when you tell them like, "Yeah, this was on that," they're like, "No, shut up, no." It's like no, like even with the beer that we just brewed, that IPA, that was our first all grain ever, and the way it turned out, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is life changing that we can make good beer still, even though it's not an extract recipe that we're just following instructions to a T.
Right. Now or have a $5,000 system.
Yes, because we're 0 or 2 behind that in regards to budget. But I am pumped. One last thing before we get into the questions, because I do have questions for today's show. It's spring. I've been getting hit up with emails from listeners and from customers of keconnection.com asking about like common best recipes. I wanted to get your opinion, because you're always the one who selects these seasonal recipes that y'all put on sale at homebrewsupply.com.
Right,
there's spring stuff right.
I just pick them out of a hat, though. I don't really.
Yeah, I knew. See, I wanted to call you out in public to our dozens of listeners. What right now the recipes you picked on Homebrew Supply, are those like the ones that are being pushed on the homepage? Are those the traditional spring recipes? Like, what is a style that if someone said, "Hey, recommend something for me to brew in spring," what is your go-to?
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't completely lying when I said I picked them out of a hat. I didn't do actual research, like what are the most common styles of beer in the spring. I just kind of picked what makes sense to me, I guess. So I may be a little biased in that regard, but yeah, I typically think of lighter ales. So, you're coming out of the cold typically. So you're usually shifting away from like the darker, maltier stouts and porters and things that typically go well with the cold weather. So I always think of things like Hefeweizens, which are, light body, easy drinking, lagers, pale ales. Kolsch is a great one for the spring and summer. Even alt beer, it's a little darker, but it's not, very heavy body. So those are kind of the ones, and of course, like lawnmower beer, like a cream ale is right down that same path. So, those lighter body, less, malt forward,
right,
are typically what I think of, at least when I think of spring and summertime.
Being 2019, I think it's fair to say too, because we're not old time brewing anymore. We're not old time harvesting anymore. We live in a day where you can you could go to a grocery store, not for a home brewing, but for you could get any fruit or vegetable basically any time of the year.
Sure.
And same with home brewing ingredients, right? Like you can call your homebrew supply shop, and more times than not, you can brew whatever you want any time of the year.
Yeah.
So it's getting considerably harder to say, well, this is this time of year beer. Besides, like the season, like I got crap. I posted a photo of my pop and I when we were camping in February at Big Ben, and it was a picture. We still have a bunch of Shiner Oktoberfest, and like, hey, buddy, that's out of season. It's like, no, it's not. You know what the season is? January 1st to December 31st. That's my season.
Yeah, I think Oktoberfest beer is really good to drink in the spring too, and it's weird how it is traditionally brewed in the spring and then actually drink in the fall. But it's a lighter bodied lager, so it goes just well with.
It was perfect out there. Yeah, Marzen is a year round style, and I say that about everything though. I used to get crap when Todd. Before he banned me from saying Founder's Breakfast Stout when he's on the show, he used to always give me crap too, because it'd be June. He's like, you can't drink a breakfast stout in June. I was like, I'll do what I want. And sure. Now, I think they actually made breakfast stout year round now, didn't they?
They did. I think
they know.
They're brewing year round now. Well, and the other thing too, if you're brewing it yourself, you have to consider the time that it takes to ferment and carbonate and stuff. So you may be a month behind the season that you want to actually drink it in, or
good point. That's an excellent point, because you're right. Sometimes I forget, like when we do a push on any recipes, and like if you wait too long to announce it, it's like, oh crap, they're gonna brew a spring, air quotations for audio listeners, spring recipe right now, but when it's ready, crap, it's gonna be summer. Like,
especially here in Texas, summer comes early.
Yeah, summer's like next week, man. But yeah, I wanted to ask that because we have been getting a ton of people asking, and I've been sending them to you to Homebrew Supply because the 20% off of those spring select recipes, which is ending soon, because by the time, like, you can't run the whole thing through spring, because you want to enjoy it in spring, and a lot of them are actually quick recipes. The turnaround rather can be fairly quick. So, which actually, that is going to be my segue. I'm going to start with the second question, just because it kind of bled into that. Sure. The first question for today's show is from Joshua. Great name. He writes in from using the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. He wrote in saying, hey, y'all, new listener here. So glad I found the show. You recently had a guest on who mentioned having brewed and kegged a beer that was ready to drink in like 14 days. For us impatient brewers, can you recommend any other recipes that brew that fast and are ready to drink in less than a month? Or maybe share the recipe he made. Love the show. Keep on crushing it. Josh. Joe, I want to start it by saying it was James, I believe he's referring to.
Okay.
Because James is always, and the reason I say that is because James is always harping on imperial yeast being the reason his beers finish out quick, is the term he uses. Is yeast the key to being able to enjoy your beer quicker?
It can definitely play a big factor. So I think one thing that will slow you down, and so let me start off by saying almost all ales, technically you could get them into the glass in like 14 days. So the what will slow you down is your yeast. So let's go back to that. Your yeast, if you're not you don't have the amount the amount of cells you need to ferment, it's going to be sluggish. If you don't make a starter, it's going to lag a little bit. So making a starter, ensuring you have enough cells for the amount of sugar you have in your wort is going to play a big part of that. And you can sometimes see your fermentation be totally cleaned up in 3 days. Sometimes it can take up to 2 weeks if you're lagging and don't have enough cells. So that can play that's kind of the first part of that explanation. And then what also can play a factor is if you have a dry hopping schedule, that's going to end up taking some more time. Usually you want to let them sit in there for at least 5 days. So sometimes 7 days. So that's going to add on some time. But if you take like a cream ale, for example, a lawnmower beer, it's going to be very simple, typically no dry hopping. And if you pitch enough yeast, you can have it fermented in, say, 5 days. And that's giving it a little cushion too, if you have a good yeast and enough cell count. So say you're finished in 5 days, you don't even have to secondary, but you can secondary for another 5 days. And that would be 10 days. And that's primary, secondary. If you keg it from there, you can carbonate it in a couple days. That's 12. That's only 12 days after the brew day. So, you can really push your kind of your boundaries. And, so some of the ales, I mentioned a lot of ales fall into that time frame. Ales that would be, some of the bigger, boozier ales that you do want a secondary for longer, that age well. So barley wines and stouts and certain porters and those kind of things. So, pretty straightforward, balanced ales or it's not unreasonable to be expecting them to be done in 2 weeks. So.
I believe the recipe too was that ESB that Todd did that we were talking about, because I think like we brewed it one time I was up there, and I go up to the headquarters every other week, and it was
next time you were there.
Next time I was there on that Tuesday, I think is when he kegged it. Right. And so it was, I think that's the one, because there was no secondary, there was no dry hopping. It was very straightforward. There are other beers too that I was going to say, but then I had to think, no, because like an alt beer, you couldn't, because you have to treat it like a lager. It's very, you want it to go longer, and you're cold conditioning it. Same with the Kolsch, right? Like there is a pretty strict schedule of lagering or cold conditioning that is required in some ales.
It's at least highly recommended. Yeah.
There you go.
It's going to come out a lot of people use the term green. If you don't let it condition long enough, it's going to have, the flavor is not going to fully mature enough to be kind of what it could be.
Now, we are spoiled in the fact that there's always beer on tap, and we don't have to be impatient or I mean, we can be patient because we just can't go through all the beer. Yeah. But trying to put myself in the lens of other Josh here, is there some reason besides wanting to just drink it quicker? What kind of like advice can you impart onto him? Like for either like, yeah, don't worry about it, or here's what to maybe look for to see if it's not quite finished, or a reason why he maybe should let his beers go. Like it's 14 days. Would you give a stamp of approval on yes, enjoy it? Or is there always some reason that you should just, give it a month because of whatever?
Yeah. So if you are really wanting, your beer to be as clear as possible, and your appearance is a big factor, then I would say, yeah, the longer and secondary, probably the more, the brighter your beer is going to end up being. Now, controversially, with IPAs, I would give a big stamp of approval, get them in the keg and in your glass as fast as possible, because the hop profile from your dry hopping and late additions in the kettle, those will start to fade, and they they're not gonna last forever. So the quicker you can drink your IPAs, the better.
Good point. I'm glad you said that too. I usually sometimes write down show notes, and by that I mean I never write down show notes, but on the notes. But I was gonna ask you that too. A follow up on that is like dry hopping. You don't want to. You're doing that for a reason. There is a flavor you're going for when you're adding those in. If I do it in February 1st and then I don't carb and tap that keg until June, or I mean, that's an exaggeration, but I mean, there's going to be a noticeable difference between when you dry hop day one and the longer you wait.
Big time. Yeah. And so I typically recommend people to not let their hops sit in there for more than a week or two. I mean, you're really not going to get much more out of them than they've already imparted. And then anything, longer than a couple or a few weeks, the hops actually staying in there. If you haven't racked it or kegged it, you can start to get a vegetable flavor that it'll impart. So that is a little bit, concerning if you kind of forget about a carboy or something has dry hopped. But once you, and then back to the other point. Yeah. Once it is actually kegged, if you just kind of stick it in the closet for months, it's not going to taste the same as if you carbonated it and drank it that same day kind of thing.
And by not the same, you really mean it's not going to taste how you probably wanted it to, because that's all going away.
Right. We call them, you can go to a store and buy an old IPA that's been sitting on the shelf, and we call them malt bombs. So basically all the hops that are kind of, forbearing on that style are faded and gone, and all you really get is the maltiness that's supposed to balance the hop. So that can be a big issue. And as much as Budweiser and some of these huge corporations have a very strict, I mean, they're on their employees big time about keeping their beer rotated, where it doesn't matter nearly as much as IPAs and those kind of styles. It matters way more. But
yeah, unfortunately, when you go to some smaller liquor stores and get an IPA And
Check the bottom of the can or the see if it has a bottle or can date, and that'll go a long way. And
exactly. Exactly. Because that's you get the womp womp trombone when you open it and it's not. You're like, or worse, that brewery has a mark on them, in your opinion, when it's not necessarily their fault that the liquor store didn't rotate it out or whatever.
Well, and that's a good point. That's why you'll see a lot of these breweries that have these I don't want to say stigma. What's the right word? They have these reputations of having some of the best IPAs out there. Russian River and Trillium and Treehouse. They don't ship outside of, they don't even really hardly sell at stores around them, just because they don't want to taint that reputation by shipping it in a truck that's not, climate controlled, getting it beat up on the way down to Texas. And then once it hits our shelf, it's not even the same thing as, that's one of the other reasons I'm really excited for Rhode Island. I want to see if I can sneak a time to make it into Vermont for some of the.
You recommended that. I told you. I said, let's do it, man. I'll find a reason to stay a day or two with you. We'll go there. Vermont. We can we'll get some Bernie swag, and where he's at too. We'll get some good beer. I'll pretend like I like that beer, no problem. Joshua, thank you so much for submitting the question. The last question of today's show has come from Tony R, who also used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Tony wrote in, love the show and the banter between you guys. It sounds like you have a lot of fun producing the podcast, and I certainly enjoy listening. I am a relative novice homebrewer and have a basic question based on something that happened during my last brew session. I utilized propane as my heat source and had an issue mid-boil until the gas regulator froze up. This reduced the wort temp such that it stopped boiling. I poured hot water on the regulator to get the gas flowing again. My question is about timing for a 60-minute boil. Should I stop the clock while the wort was off the boil and then restart once boil is reestablished, or should I just keep the timer flowing throughout? Thanks again for the podcast, and I hope to hear my question in a future episode. This actually sort of happened to me and my dad in the last brew day. It was actually during the sparge. So we'll cover the whole spectrum, but just real quick, we had a little bit of a stuck sparge, and so our sparge went for like an hour and 20 minutes instead of like the 45 minutes or whatever James said. And I had talked to him and he was like, no, it should be fine. And it did end up being fine. I've never had an issue during the boil. Is this something you've ever encountered during your mini brew days?
Yeah, I've never actually had a regulator freeze up, the propane regulator. But I could see how that had happened. I would say first, on the issue of that being an issue just in itself, the regulator freezing. If it was like midway through the boil, the only thing I could think of is if you maybe had it full blast to keep that boil going. Otherwise, because usually what I'll do when I brew with propane is I'll crank it up pretty close to the full blast to get that boil going. But once I've reached a boil, I'll usually ease it off just enough to keep the boil rolling. So maybe if you didn't have it eased off a bit and you had a full blast for the whole boil, first of all, you're probably wasting fuel. You can save some fuel by doing that. But second of all, I don't think it's completely necessary to have your propane, and that may not have been what caused it, but that's just kind of what I thought may have been the issue. In regards, I've had my propane run out and mid boil and had to go get a new tank, and so basically that's what I did. I stopped my clock, got back with the new tank, got it to a boil again, and started the clock again. It's not ideal. Basically, what you have to consider when that happens is whether or not to stop or just let the clock run. Is the main thing you're really have to keep in mind is the hops are going to isomerize at like 180 degrees, I think it is. So you're going to be losing some of your IBUs if you're not in a full boil or you're less than 180 degrees. Now, if you're, that's a pretty cool trick to pour the warm water on your regulator. I would say, if that happens, I would do that as quick as possible and just not worry about stopping the clock. But if you do, stop your boil does die off for more than 10 or 15 minutes, it may be probably advisable to go ahead and stop that clock, just because your hops are not actually putting off the IBUs that it would if you were above 180 degrees. So that would be the only thing to really consider. Your sugars it's not going to really affect your sugars that much. The whole reason you really boil for the 60 minutes generally, you don't need that with the modifications in grain nowadays, you really don't typically need that. I've actually heard of people doing 30-minute boils. If your hop schedule allows it, then it usually is not going to cause any issues. So the main thing it is, again, going back to it, you do have to just keep in mind that your hops are not imparting as many IBUs if you're not at above 180 degrees. So once you drop down there, I would probably go ahead and stop the clock, and then once you get back up to a boil, start it again after that.
60 minutes is not arbitrary. It came from some point, but like you said, it's not always necessary. I've seen that too, and some, like, I think Experimental Brewing did one time where they did like a 30-minute or
side by side or something.
Right.
And
it wasn't that big a difference. What is something like, if Tony, is there anything that he can specifically look for in the final result that would indicate that something went wrong when it cooled down? Or is the boil at that point, is that one of the safer parts of brew day to have a mishap?
I wouldn't be super duper worried or concerned. I mean, I don't know what style of beer it was either. If you're using a ton of hops for bittering and it ends up being like a bitter bomb, like all you taste is bitterness and none of the, the aroma and the flavor of the hop, you just really get the bitterness, that may be attributed to a mishap like that. That, like I said, that the real main thing you're going to cause kind of differences or issues may arise is the hops. So that would be the only thing I could really think of flavor wise. Now, if it was almost a majority Pilsner grain bill, most people recommend a 90-minute boil for Pilsner malt, just because you can get like a cream corn flavor sometimes if you don't. And then again, going back to how modified grain is nowadays, there's people who disagree with that too, but sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry. But yeah, I don't think you're going to notice any adverse flavors or off flavors just by having that little, hiccup during the boil.
Good. I like hearing that, because I know now I'm fully, my dad and I, besides that pseudo stut sparge, we've still had no major issues in a brew day, but I am told all grain brewing brings out the worst of your brew day. So
was that the IPA y'all had a stuck sparge?
We did. Yeah.
Okay.
It was. And it was, I believe that I didn't put the false bottom, the tubing thing all the way on, because once I from the outside, we stuck a little sanitized faucet brush in there.
Through, yeah.
And it worked.
Okay. Easy fix, at least.
Super easy fix.
It did have some flaked grain, right? Some flaked oats or
wheat.
It
did have flaked oats. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe I should have given you guys like a half a pound of rice hulls just to be safe. But I'm glad it was an easy fix at least.
It was super easy, and that's why I didn't call you. Like, you and James are always on speed dial for my brew days, and like I don't know if I've told y'all, I alternate who I call in that day so that I don't annoy one of y'all more than the other.
That's very considerate of you, man.
I'm smarter than I look. Okay, James is first. I'll ask him this because it's about this thing that he knows. And then the next question, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to ask Joe this because he also knows the answer to this, and I just called James. And then, okay, I just called Joe, so now I need to call. Yeah, or texting. And I can't, when y'all,
calling is usually better when it's
calling is usually better, and I usually if I've asked a bunch of questions to y'all both, that's when I go to the text, because I'm like,
gotta mix it up.
Then I also can't hear the disappointment in your voice. Like, there you go. There's no tone to text. Like,
what?
Yeah.
What now?
Don't you know I'm watching my shows? Or I don't. That's how I always pictured James. I have no idea what he enjoys his weekends. He's always working on something, but I just picture him like with his what was the character from Al Bundy? The hand in the front, the beer.
And watching his World War II
watching
YouTube
my
videos.
shows. Yeah, he's not really doing that, but he's not here today, so I can joke at his expense. That does it. Tony and Joshua, thank you so much for submitting the questions. Joe, my friend, once again, I greatly appreciate you coming on the show last minute. And last time you were on the show, I was supposed to come up there. I had all those beers from Frank, and then the stuff happened. And I'm now coming up though here in a few days, and so
I'm actually coming down to Austin tomorrow for birthday celebrations.
Are you?
So yeah, maybe we may try and do San Marcos too. So if you're around, I'll let you know what's going on. And
yeah, please do.
But if we don't link up, definitely bring them up.
I'm bringing them up Monday because one of them is I don't remember if it was called like Punch You in the Groin Sour. No, I'm kidding. That's not the name of it. But it is, I think, from Mother Earth Brewing there in San Diego is the one that
nice.
and I don't know if anyone else, like, when Frank gave me the beers, he was like, these beers, I got some for everybody. When I saw that one, I didn't ask, but I can't imagine he meant that for anyone other than you.
I guess not. I mean, I'm not even that
oh no, Frank knows you.
Vocal of a sour guy, but I do enjoy good sour, so I'm excited to.
I think you
try them all.
I think as long as you don't say you hate something, listeners notice that.
Yeah, you may be onto something there.
Yeah, listeners notice. But anyways, Joe, I appreciate you, sir, and we will do it again soon.
Yes, sir. Have a good weekend, man.
You too. And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the Submit a Question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, ketconnection.com, for supporting our podcast and the home brewing community. Go to ketconnection.com, use the promo code HHH, and you'll receive 5% off your order. On behalf of Ladik Joe Ermis, the absent Todd Burns, and the absent James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, almost forgot that one, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.